Welcome to Talking with Tech. I'm your host, Rachel Madel, joined as always by Chris Bugay. Hey, Chris.
How's it going, Rachel?
It's going good. Really excited that we're doing our recording. I always love recording with you.
So, Rachel, there's been a question that I've had on my mind for a while now that I've wanted to ask you. You and I, when we record, you usually, it looks like in your bedroom / office or something,
Yes.
right? And I'm in the closet, right?
Yes.
But almost every time we record, you have a cup of tea that you sip on. And I noticed that you have like a glass. It's a specific glass that you drink out of every time. It's not like you have a different mug every time. It's a glass mug. And it's always this kind of light tea, not really dark, So I want to hear what's up with your tea. And I noticed you also have like a pot that you pour into every once in a while to fill it up. Because for a while there was like, it's like an endless thing of tea. Like, how does she always have more tea? She keeps drinking it, but it never goes down. So tell me about your tea.
Okay, so let me first start off with talking about my addiction to coffee. So I love coffee. I love the smell of it. I love the taste of it. I have been obsessed with coffee for years. And just recently, as in the last couple months, I actually transitioned to tea. So I have this cute little blue teapot that has like a little strainer. So it's green tea. It's not black tea, it's green tea. And this little cup and this little saucer is from my grandmother. And so it's like one of my favorite little things that like my grandmother left me after she passed away. And it just reminds me of her and it makes me happy. It also reminds me of my mom. And so, yeah, I just this is part of my morning routine. I wake up, sometimes I'll go for a run or exercise and then I'll come into my room and I'll start working. This is like my quarantine routine. And I'll always have a little pot of tea and I'll sip it throughout the morning.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a big tea drinker myself. And we actually have a local tea shop that you can go to and get like tea tastings. And they have the walls are covered with different types of tea from all over the world. And you can get like some people will go and they would do a flight, and we would sit there and the person comes over and explains what each type of tea was. I learned that you're supposed to slurp your tea because you get more oxygen in when you do that. Like how you get yelled at from your mom for slurping your soup off the spoon,
Yeah.
They say you're actually supposed to do that with tea. So who knew that we had this affinity for tea?
I have actually a funny story about coffee. So I was in Washington last summer with my brother. And we went to Seattle. We were doing some camping and backpacking, but we flew into Seattle. And so we spent some time there. And we went to Starbucks was born in Seattle. And they have a reserve Starbucks there where they basically you can learn so much about coffee. They have coffee flights. They have all different kinds of coffee infused cocktails. So anyway, I went with my brother. He got a cold brew flight. I got a pour over flight. And I've never been so jazzed on caffeine than when I left. I felt like I could run a marathon. I'm like, I think I drank too much, Matt. And that's my brother. So anyway, we learned all about coffee and I realized that maybe we should have shared a flight. We shouldn't have gotten our own flight each.
Hey, you mentioned a marathon. I saw that you have signed up for a virtual marathon. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I'm actually.
Or is it a marathon? Is it a 5K?
It's a 5K. No, it's not a marathon. Thank God. I don't know if I could run a marathon right now. Although I've run a half marathon in my past. But yes, it's called Sophie's Run, and I'm really excited. I actually was just messaging with the Instagram account. They tagged me in a photo, which is how I learned about it, and I was really excited. First of all, their mission is wonderful. Essentially is a fundraiser to help students and children get devices who don't have access. And of course, that's something that you and I, Chris, feel really strongly about. I also love exercise and running. So it was perfectly aligned. And so I am really excited. I actually messaged them and said they should come on the podcast just for a little, brief spot talking about their fundraiser, because they typically have an in-person event, but because of COVID-19, they've created this virtual event. So everyone is still participating, but now they've opened it up to anyone who wants to participate. You can sign up and then take a selfie of you, running, and you can do it, throughout the course of a week. I think it's in May, as a way to support this cause. And I just thought it was such a cool thing that I definitely wanted to sign up for. And they're going to send me a t-shirt early so I can put my t-shirt on and go on social media, encourage people to sign up because it's such an amazing cause. And I just love this idea of this virtual 5K.
Absolutely. So I don't, you don't know this. I'll just reveal it right now here live on the podcast that just before that run came out, I also got tagged on it in Twitter instead of Instagram. But my wife, like literally, I don't know, 10 hours beforehand was like, Chris, we should do a virtual 5K, and seeing them come pop up, and we should do, the whole family should do one. And I was like, sure, sign us up. What should we do? And then that came out and I was like, well, this is it. This is the one we're going to do. So we are signed up as well. We are also going to do it. So maybe we can coordinate, sometime to do it together and take some sort of video or something.
Maybe we should Facebook Live it, Chris.
As we're running.
I love it. I love it. See, I you know what's so funny? I had on my to-do list to tell you about that, but look, like we're so aligned that we already signed up separately, and now we're making it a Talking with Tech event.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if anyone listening wants to do it, you can do it as well. So what's the website again? Do you know it off the top of your head?
RunSophies5K.com is how you sign up.
RunSophies5K.com. Okay,
yes.
Cool.
RunSophies5K.com. And yeah, we'll definitely link to it in the show notes so you guys can sign up. And if you follow myself on or Chris on social media, we can post it on social media and in our Facebook group and things like that. But how cool! I love this idea of coming together as a community and supporting a cause like this. It's great.
Me too. So I have another story, some interesting news to share with everybody and to share with you. So once upon a time, I think I've mentioned it before, that my wife and I used to do a podcast together called Nightlight Stories. And Nightlight Stories had over 60 episodes where my wife and I wrote original children's stories, and then she would record them and we would put them out on this podcast. We were known as Miss Mel and Mr. Chris, and we would do like an opening segment like we do, and then we'd play the story. And something that happened, interestingly enough, is that years ago I got to write a book called The Practical and Fun Guide to Assistive Technology with Sally Norton-Darr. She was my co-author, and that was published by ISTE. And right after we finished publishing that book, ISTE wrote me. They found out I was doing these Nightlight Stories with Melissa, and they said, would you like to write a novella for early elementary or middle elementary, like 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade students, where it's some sort of fictional story, but kids use technology in the story. We feel like that would be a way to educate the generation of students who use technology, as opposed to like learning it from a lesson. They're reading stories about it,
Right.
And so they were exploring the idea of publishing books that way, that were a series of fiction books. And in fact, they did early elementary books called the Piano and Laylee series. And what happened is my wife and I pitched them a bunch of ideas. We had all these different ideas of how these, like a team of students would solve mysteries. And we landed on one, and they said, go for it, write it. And so we wrote this novella, which we ended up calling The Cloud. And we sent it off to ISTE, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. But their board decided that they wanted to stick with nonfiction publications. They didn't want to continue to go in the direction of having fiction books. So our book kind of got shelved, and it just sat in cyberspace for the last, in our Google Drive for the last 10 years or so, until now that we are quarantined. And my wife said, we're doing it. We've always talked about bringing Nightlight Stories back. We have the story done. It's just her recording it and putting it out on the podcast. So I'm happy to announce that we have released, at the time of this recording, there are already 3 chapters out on Nightlight Stories that you can get for free about these 4th graders solving mysteries. It's kind of like a Scooby-Doo feel, but it's 4th graders solving mysteries using technology. And of course, because it's me and my wife, we totally have this underlying theme of universal design and using technology that's for students with disabilities, but use it for everybody. And we mentioned some of those technologies, not by the function of the technology, not by the name of the tool specifically, right? So there's at least 3 episodes now. She's working on the 4th one as we speak. That should come out any day now. And like I said, there's 25 of them, all for free. And so it might be something that you and your family enjoy. Yeah.
And so what do you think, what's the perfect age range, would you say, for this kind of a thing? Well, I'm definitely going to go listen anyway, even if it's beyond my age range, because I'm just intrigued to hear what these stories are all about. But what's the optimal age range.
Yeah, well, so that's what's so great about these audio stories is that it really is for anybody. It's sort of like asking what's the age range for Harry Potter. Like,
Right.
well, I love Harry Potter. I love the Hunger Games. I like YA stuff. And that's it's really meant for the whole family. I mean, I would say the only people that it would be for are people who are, I don't know, 4 or younger. Anyone who's above the age of maybe 5 or older might enjoy listening to these stories, and they're not very long. Like the chapters are relatively short. We did that, intentionally. If you look at those sort of grade level books, the chapters are relatively short because it keeps you moving. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why 25 chapters might seem like, oh my gosh, a 25 chapter. No, it's not like that. I mean, some of the episodes are less than 10 minutes long, but it keeps you going for the next one, So, and we feel like you could be solving the mysteries right along with the characters in the book. And that's how it's sort of written. So love for people to check it out. It's nightlightstories.net. We just kept the same URL, the same podcast feed. You can get all the old stories there too. But the next 25 or so, 25 episodes will all be the cloud.
I have to tell you a story that's similar to this, Chris. When I was in Nepal, I was trekking. I did some work in Nepal, and then I was able to meet up with my friend, and we were able to do some hiking. And when we were hiking, we were in the middle of the Himalayas. There was no real access to any entertainment, right? There weren't TVs. There wasn't, internet. But what we did, which was so cool, was we downloaded the audiobook Into Thin Air, which is all about John Krakauer is the author of that book. He's a journalist that did an expedition to Mount Everest. And we were like, well, we're in the Himalayas. Like, let's listen to Into Thin Air, which is a very well-written story. And it's based on true events that happened. But every night, my friend and I would listen to this audio story like before bed. And what's funny is that we didn't finish the book. We almost finished the book, but we didn't get to finish the book. And so then we would get together, and instead of watching a television show, we would just listen to this audiobook. And it was so fun. It changed kind of the way that I view entertainment. And sometimes it's just nice to not, sit in front of the television. It's nice to just listen and listen to an audiobook. So I feel like it's the same thing with Nightlight Stories. It's a different kind of entertainment, and I feel like it's something that's really good for the whole family to participate in.
So audio stories, I think there's a lot of research that supports audio stories just help with reading in general, right? And so because it helps with this theater of the mind, and audio comprehension helps with reading comprehension, because once you're reading, you can kind of picture things. And there's, of course, students that have difficulty picturing things, but when you have this, like creating a picture or movie in their mind, but the audio seems to help with that. And plus the other benefit there is, like you were saying, you're walking, you're doing something else, where right now during lockdown or quarantine, or what do you want to call this, staying home, there's bound to be more screen time. Well, this is a way you can still get stories, but you don't have the screen that's affecting your visual. You can be cleaning up your room. You can be doing laundry. You can be doing the dishes. You can be going for a walk outside, just going around your block or whatever. There's lots of ways to engage with audio stories that way and keep the literacy flowing.
Yeah, for sure. And you always hear about, visualizing and verbalizing, right? Like that's a strategy for helping students with reading comprehension. And this reminded me of our episode we did about the audio jack, right? With David Tobin, that string of kind of sounds and environmental noises as a way to just really tap into creativity and think about what's happening when the only input you have is listening to something. So I think it's very similar. And I definitely think it's a great way to, tap into creativity and to help kids with, reading comprehension, understanding storylines, predicting. There's so many different ways that you could use it. So I'm really excited to check it out.
Now, do you know who else really likes audio stories?
Who?
The people who really like audio stories, I bet Miriam and Bronwyn and Lori and Karen and Kristen. I bet you those 5 people really like audio stories too. Do you know who those 5 people are?
They sound familiar, Chris. I think they're our Patreon members.
They are, but they're a specific set of Patreon members. They are the people who won the Caroline Musselwhite giveaway. Can you refresh everyone's memory on what the Caroline Musselwhite giveaway was?
Yes. So wasn't it a booklet? I think she calls them booklets, which I think is the cutest thing ever. It was on pranks. And she talked about that when she was on our podcast, and was nice enough to give away a few copies to our Patreon members. So really excited that we were able to help some of our Patreon members get some ideas on some pranks. It was right around April Fool's Day when that episode aired, but pranks are good all year round.
So if you missed that because you weren't in Patreon, the way to go check out our Patreon and see if you're interested is patreon.com/talkingwithtech. And then also, we want to do a quick shout out to the people that have been leaving reviews over on iTunes. So Rachel?
I love it. I love it, you guys. First of all, SLP Tammy, she wrote a lot of stuff that was really wonderful. She says that she's been pushing for robust AAC at her agency the last couple of years. There's been so much advocacy needed, even within house. Many seasoned clinicians don't believe in AAC for this population, which breaks my heart. On the other end, there's also been some amazing clinicians who've had a paradigm shift in their perspectives. Coaching and empowering the entire family unit is the best part of our job, but there's so much advocacy to do. Also, when they leave our program, the pushback from the districts they transition to is a whole other beast. Some days I leave in tears from the frustration I have for this vulnerable population, but I'm thankful for this virtual AAC community that can educate and cheer each other on. Many days I feel like I'm on an island, but you guys inspire me to be a better and better SLP, to continue shifting the culture of AAC and early intervention, one uncomfortable conversation at a time. How great is that?
I love that.
Smiling
so
big. I love when we read these, Chris, because our cheeks literally are like hurting because we're just smiling so big ear to ear. That's when I wish people could see us. They just listen to us, but it's just what an amazing review. And that is the intention behind this podcast, right? Is to change the paradigm, right? A lot of clinicians, administrators, teachers, even parents, there's very limiting beliefs about AAC and children's potential. And I feel like it's really exciting to hear that, this podcast helps shape what people think about AAC, and they feel empowered to go and advocate for it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, sometimes I get wrapped up in my own little bubble. I've said that before. And because of all the Facebook posts that I, or Facebook groups that I belong to and Twitter people that I follow, I think, yes. We've done it, mission accomplished, but there's so many more people that need to be reached. So hearing that this inspires somebody and that this is, that they learn so much from it it keeps us going.
Can I read one more, Chris? There's
Sure.
a few new ones, but I don't know if we have time for all of them, but I just want to read this one because I really love it. The title is Seriously, the Best AAC Podcast. Thank you. This is by a user named Tigger KW6, which I'm guessing that's a reference to Winnie the Pooh, which I love. And Tigger is actually my favorite character. So I appreciate this review even more. It says, keep up the great work. You both are wonderful to listen to. I just started listening a month ago. I love all the content. When I start a show, I always think, I wonder what I will learn today. I always have some kind of takeaway in the show. It's helped me to not feel like I'm on this AAC journey alone. It helps me with professional development, AAC implementation, and feeling like a member of the AAC community. You are making a difference even in my rural town. If you're an SLP or special educator working with students who have or could benefit from AAC, this podcast is for you. I love this one too, because I feel like in AAC, sometimes we're just on little islands, right? It feels like we don't have interactions with other clinicians who, are practicing AAC, know about AAC, want to know more about AAC. And so oftentimes I think it's quite isolating. And so I love to hear that she, is in a small town, but still feels like she's a part of our community. And that's one of the coolest things about technology, right?
Yeah, I always think about it as like a family. You have your immediate family, and then you have your extended family. And that's what I feel like this community is that that person might have their local teachers, their local other therapists that they might be able to correspond with. But when you are feeling alone, you have this extended family that you can reach out to and that you can be a part of, and that you don't have to feel so alone. And I also say the wonderful thing about that review is that review is a wonderful thing.
Oh, I saw what you did there with Winnie the Pooh. Tigers are wonderful things.
Oh, bother.
Well, Chris, let's talk about our episode today. I'm really excited. We just aired Caitlyn Calder Part 1. Her and I had so much to talk about that we had to do a part 2. So you're about to listen to the second part of the interview that I did with Caitlyn Calder, who is a mom. And now she just told me, actually, she is a licensed SLP. She's done her CFY. So congratulations to Caitlyn for that achievement. You're going to do really amazing things in this field, given all of your experience, as a mom. And I'm really excited to air the second half of this episode.
Can't wait to hear Caitlyn Calder part 2.
Do you feel like you spend all of your time writing assessment reports? We know that one of the hardest things about assessments is the time it takes to write up the report. That's why we've partnered with Double Time Docs, an online software that can help you write your speech and language reports faster. You simply answer multiple choice questions, fill in the blanks, and short answers, and a fully written report is generated automatically.
It may seem like magic, and in a way, it is. Sophisticated technology generates paragraphs and scoring charts, speeding up your report writing dramatically. And they've even built out an AAC portion that focuses specifically on AAC device trialing and selection.
But don't take our word for it. You can check out the reviews on their website, doubletimedocs.com, by clicking on the Capterra link. Join thousands of therapists and save hours of time writing your evaluation reports with Double Time Docs.
Just go to doubletimedocs.com to sign up for a free 30-day trial to try it out for yourself. Don't forget to use the promo code TWT2020 to get 1 free doc credit. That's TWT2020. Check them out at doubletimedocs.com.
Do you work in a hospital or know someone that's been affected by COVID-19 and has been intubated and on a ventilator? COVID Speak is a free web-based video communication tool to connect intubated patients with their loved ones during social distancing. When someone is intubated and on a ventilator, they can greatly benefit from positive emotional connections with others. To learn more, go to covidspeak.org. First of all, I'm loving this, by the way. I love this conversation. I feel like I could talk to you all day long. Okay, I'm like, more.
Well, I'm like, I feel like they've already said all these things that I have in my presentation.
No, it's definitely, we might have touched on some of these things, but you have a very unique experience. And I feel like you actually validate the things that we say on the podcast because you experienced it, right? Yeah. Like I can speculate all day long about what I think parents are thinking and I think parents are feeling. But you're actually like, no, I felt like this.
Yeah, yes. And it's hard. It's embarrassing. Like I have said things that I swore I would never tell anybody because of the shame. It's just so embarrassing, the things that I did at this time to try to cover up what I thought was inadequacy. And I'm just disappointed in myself still, even though I've preached like, we should be, positive and looking forward. But the reality is I didn't. And so in a way we have to be mind readers, and it's not really fair that we have to do that, but we have to give parents words that they don't even know how to say, if we can kind of give them some expectations, then it might help. It would have helped me better form my questions because I didn't understand what was going wrong. And I certainly didn't know how to ask or express that. So if we can give people that, that vocabulary and start them on the right path, and I think they're more likely to ask questions. So I appreciate that you guys are always talking about those things and trying to troubleshoot because not every parent's the same either. I can't speak for everybody, but I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah. And I always think too, especially when I'm doing like a consultation or an assessment, and I feel like I word vomit so much like jargon, even like though I know it's not right or good or helpful. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and even when I'm explaining principles in a way that I think are pretty easy to understand, I'm still explaining a lot of things all at once. And so like you said, you can only absorb so much.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of unfortunately part of the process because I only have a certain amount of time and I'm like, I just want to explain this all to you. But I think there's things you can do about that. Like I always record my sessions. So I'm like, listen, you don't need to write all these things down and take diligent notes because I'm recording this. You can watch it 500 times if you need to. And so I feel like something like that is an easy solution so that parents can keep going, circling back. Like she said something about like a core word and I have no idea what that is. So maybe I'll listen to it 5 times and then like eventually I'll start understanding.
Yes. We went to school for a really long time and I certainly didn't know these things. I barely got through the friggin' midterms and finals, you know? And now that I live it, it's much different, but you're right. It's a lot for people to take in and theory and, you know, research. And it's just, and that's why I think modeling is so helpful, being able to watch it. I might not be able to, I wouldn't have been able to verbalize exactly what the SLP was doing with my child, but I could certainly reenact it. You know? So,
and just to clarify, when you say modeling, you mean a clinician modeling for a parent what to do?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So, my husband's funnier than me, but he tells we presented this, in front of parents. I've done it in front of SLPs twice, and then we just did it in front of parents. And he tells the story. We went to ABA for like 12 weeks and to do brushing hair. Okay. Cause like couldn't brush her hair and it just looked awful all the time. And so we had this great ABA therapist named Mr. Kyle, and he made us practice and he acted like he was Della. He's like a 30-year-old man. And he's like, okay, go. And I'm like,
this is awkward.
Do I call him Della? Do I call him Mr. Kyle? I'm like, okay, Mr. Kyle, it's time to brush your hair. Like, this is so awkward. And then he starts like slapping at me and I'm like, you know, but he wouldn't let us do it with Della until we got like at least 80% right, you know?
Wow.
And it was like, okay, I can do this. And then when I did it with her, I was like, well, this is working. But in the meantime, it was like so freaking awkward. I'm like, you are pretending to be a child with autism and you're slapping me and you're 30 years old. Like, I was like a sweaty mess. Like, it just was so awkward, but I loved him for that. I'm so grateful he did that. So being able to see a clinician talking back and forth with my child using a device, I would have been like, oh, okay, I can do that. You know, and I also, in the parent, when I explained about the input and output, the things that the child's getting is speech, you know, yet we're expecting him to use something else that's not speech. Like, of course, it's going to be super confusing. So let's try to make the input and output as consistent as we can and also use the machine, you know? So it's just such a fine line between like freaking people out and nerding out and like giving people what they need to move forward.
Well, and I think that you bring up a really good point. It's awkward at first, right? It's awkward for everybody, even for me. And I kind of like am at a point in my career where I see the extreme importance in not only involving parent, but actually live coaching parent.
Yes.
Like real time being like, no, wait, pause. I need you to pause. You know, and that type of feedback and coaching is where you really start to see gains. But I have to say, when I first started doing this, I felt so uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because everybody feels uncomfortable. Parents feel uncomfortable. Like it's like an awkward thing. That you just like all around through.
All of us are sweating. Like my mustache area gets really sweaty when I get stressed out. And so I'm like, he's looking at my sweaty mustache. Like, it's just so odd. And it's like, but we're all in this together. And if he's willing to do this and be there with me and act like a baby, like, okay, fine, I'm in. Let's do it.
Yep.
So I love Mr. Kyle. He was really great. And I was taking score like who was doing better, me or my husband, and he made me throw it in the trash.
Oh, I love that story. It's such an important reminder though. And we all need to just like get over the awkwardness because after that, true learning happens. And if you think about when learning actually occurs, it's always when we're pushed out of our comfort zone a little bit. You know, it's never when we're just hanging out in like, you know, Comfortville. No. It's always when we're like, someone's nudging us out and we're like, no, but I don't want to. It's going to be awkward and weird.
No, yes. Yep.
But that's where learning
for us. It's not easy, but I feel like if we as SLPs can show families that we're willing to go there with them, you're much more likely to see them be like, okay, I mean, you're jumping in feet first. Let's do it, you know? And that would have been helpful. But again, I'm not knocking any of my child's SLPs. They were really great. And also I was lying to them anyway. So
let's talk about that for a second, because I'm reading your shame list.
Oh my
your
gosh.
shame list. So let's talk about your shame list.
Oh my gosh. I remember the first time I told the story, and it was in front of SLPs, and I wasn't sure how they were going to take it. And so the story that really shows where I was at in life is I would strap my daughter's device into the front seat of my car on the way to speech, and then I would press buttons like at red lights, and thinking, I was like nervous that maybe there was a counter in there, and like maybe she was seeing, but then what if the counter also had the date and she saw like all 150 button pushes were only during the ride before
for the 10 minutes before the session started?
But I was like, well, she's going to use like yes and no and more a lot more often than these other words. I didn't know about fringe and core. I'm like hitting the main buttons like, oh yeah, I bet you saw how many times she pushed it, you know. Like, so stupid. It's so stupid. But I did not understand why it wasn't freaking working. I didn't understand. And I didn't know how to ask her because I just thought it was me. I was like, oh, it must be me. She comes out of that session with, you know, new words that she used. And I'm like, I don't know.
In retrospect, what do you think was not, I'll put in air quotes, not working? Like, was it that she wasn't seeing you model on the device, so she wasn't using it? Was it like,
sure. I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm sure. I didn't understand the importance of that. And I'm not sure really any of us did back then. It was 10 years ago when we were just kind of figuring this crap out.
Yeah.
It's not crap. You're figuring this stuff out. It's just, you know, like I said, I feel like research is really starting to kind of shift, and it's great, but it was me. It was the buy-in from our family. I did not understand how important that was. I knew it was important, and I was supposed to carry it around with me all the time and have it available all the time, but I thought she was just supposed to use it.
Right. You know? And so when she wasn't just using it, you thought, right. Am I doing something wrong? Well, what's the deal?
Yes, 100%. I was like, well, she doesn't want to use it. I don't know. I just had like all these things I did not want my SLP to know. Because I was like, oh, she's going to think I'm a terrible parent, and she's going to find out I'm a liar, because I am a liar, because I'm lying to her every time. Like, oh, it was just so cringy. I thought things that were not true. Like, her language window is closed forever. I'm too late. Okay. Yes. Is there a prime time to learn language? Of course there is, but it's never too late.
No, never.
But I thought that, and I was like, what have I done? I've wasted all this time, and now, you know, it's too late for her, or, you know, people are going to write her off and not want to help her. I don't know. And I had these, like, maybe she would have been mainstreamed if I had been better about using this. Now I understand that that's not the case for my child. It's just a heavy weight to carry. And I carried it for a really, really long time. And I wish that I had understood, hey, this is weird. You're not doing it wrong. It's okay. It's weird for everyone. Totally unnatural. Just keep going. So
that's so fascinating just to hear your perspective. And honestly, I appreciate your honesty, because I know it probably still isn't easy to say these things out loud.
So embarrassing. I'm not a liar in real life, and I don't like lying at all. You know,
which just probably added to the shame spiral.
Totally. It doesn't stop. It does not stop. But I feel like unless I'm willing to say it, I'm not the only person. I know I'm not. And there are parents who are more natural than I was at that time, and or more accepting, or I don't know. But I'm not the only person. And here's the things that I wish I had known when I had started out. That's the presentation I tried to make. You know, these things would have helped me out. And so take for what you will, but you know, it would have been helpful.
One of the terms that you use in your presentation that I really like is co-clinician. And I would love for you to explain that to our audience, because I've actually never heard that before.
Okay, so co-clinician to me was like, we want parents to be part of the team, right? I mean, they are possibly the most important behind the child. So if you treat them like a co-clinician, like again, we're in this together, and what you have to say matters. You know your child. I don't know what your child's doing the other 23 hours a day, 7 days a week, you know? So no, I know that there's 24 hours of the day, but I'm just saying you see the child for 1 hour a week. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and including them on goals, like, hey, what was your kid interested in? And on my presentation, I have obsessed with, and I like cross it out. But you know, what's your kid perseverating on? Like, let's talk about all of that. And, you know, just trying to bring the parent in, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We need your input on these goals. What's important to you? And we might do that. I think we're really good at doing that in the first few sessions and kind of getting a feel. And then maybe we might do it again if the kid's having a hard time staying motivated. We'll say, oh, you know, what's motivating to them right now? But giving them that respect and like being like, you know, we're treating your child together because we need you on this team. You are the most important part, and we will take into consideration and follow through with any valuable input that you have. And it's all valuable in some way, shape, or form.
I could not agree more. And I think that you highlighted a really important point, which was it's so easy in the beginning to focus on those things and or if there's a problem, but we should be checking in on those things on a continuous basis because we know that communication occurs only when there's motivation, and we know that children's motivations are changing.
And I think especially with ASD, like my daughter doesn't give a crap about most stuff. She doesn't care.
Yeah.
She just watches from afar like, oh, that's nice. Math, that's cute. I'm not doing it. You know, so there, yes, she is evolving and changing what she's into, but you know, if we can keep up with that, it's super helpful. It makes our job easier as SLPs for sure. Cause it's like, oh, suddenly she likes Fruit Loops. Fine. We're going to talk about Fruit Loops or dinosaurs or whatever. My daughter's into like weird Russian cartoons and South Korean cartoons. I'm like, whatever, we're doing it. She probably speaks like Russian and Korean, like in her mind. She's watched so many hours. And you brought up Snowflake, that song on YouTube. Yeah. It's like super soothing.
Oh my God. Yeah.
She made like a loop of just the audio and it's like half an hour long. And she just like does her thing. It's so great. So, you know, the kids' videos that they're into change. So if you can get that information, those little nuggets, I think it's super helpful. And then to tell parents how helpful it is. And they're like, yeah, I am helpful.
Yeah. Well, and then you as the clinician are able to take whatever that is, even if it's, you know, little snowflake song, and figure out a way to make communication opportunities around it. Right. That's what our job is. And then communicate that to parents. Because I think oftentimes what happens is, especially with autism, is that we think like, well, they're already perseverating so much on, you know, X, Y, Z.
I know.
But like they're perseverating for a reason. Let's at least give functional communication around the perseveration.
Let's harness that weirdness right at that moment. And you know, I have a video on my presentation of my daughter threw up and she wanted to talk about it. So she talked about vomit like for 2 weeks. Was I super stoked that she was talking about vomit everywhere we went? Not really, but she was talking about it. That's what she wanted to talk about. I'm like, all right, we're going to talk about vomit. Great.
I have a similar story. I was working with a kid and he like was at a playground and he ended up like pulling down his pants and peeing on like a toy horse. And so he did this and he was so motivated to talk about it and tell this story. He would go pee pee horse, pee pee horse, pee pee horse. And then of course I was like, well, you know what, if you want to talk about it, like, let's like at least build off of this. Right. So I was like, oh, like you peed on the horse. You peed on the horse. Yeah. Let's expand this utterance.
Yes.
But you know what? He literally learned it within like 20 minutes. Yeah. He was like using on. And then I was like, okay, like let's talk about other things around this weird incident that like you think is so hilarious and fun. Right.
You have to be willing to kind of take what you can get with some of these kids. Some kids will be like motivated over whatever, but some are, my child is one of those. It's just so hard to keep her motivated because she like doesn't care. She'll just look at you like, pshaw, I'm not doing it.
Cool.
You are so late.
It's the hardest. It's the hardest thing when you have those kids that are like, take it or leave it.
Right.
Whatever.
Right. So, like, another thing that we did is we'll let her call her favorite cartoon characters. And we have like this whole weird list in our phones of family members and friends who have volunteered to be like Russian characters. Like, they don't know anything about it, but we can call them and they play along, or it's the bus barn where they park the school buses, and it says like bus fixer guy, and we can call him up and we can ask him, how's it going fixing the buses? And she has to use her device because they can't see her. Go ahead and sign. You can sign all you want, but that person is not going to answer you, Della, because you need to be using words. Yeah. So that, just trying to like think of anything that would motivate her. It's hard. And so, parents are a great resource. They can be. They might not be thrilled that their kids talking about vomit or peeing on a horse. That's mortifying, but you gotta like harness this power for good.
And the other thing that I did with that specific child is we put a quick fire freeze in their device. Let me tell you something funny. And so at least there was context to like, this is a joke or something, a story that happened. So then it became, let me tell you a funny story, pee-pee on horse. Let me tell you a funny story, pee-pee on horse.
Dude, but it's funny, right?
I know. And honestly, he was saying it all the time. All of his friends in class were laughing. He became like the funny, cool kid.
Exactly. So we need to be able to put aside like embarrassment and just like ride it. Just ride that wave, whatever it is. If it's pee-pee, if it's a Russian cartoon, I don't know. My daughter was obsessed with breast pumps for a while.
Tell me more.
Oh my gosh, her teacher would kill me. She had just had a baby, God bless her, and she was like pumping in between classes, and she'd have a sign on the door, right? Well, my daughter can't read, so she just like walks right in and was like, like the look on her face of like fascination. And so then all she wanted to do was just like try it out, talk about it, and her teacher was like, we're not talking about it. And then finally just was like, fine, you can turn it on and off. No, you can't use it. It motivated her, and she got a lot done. She learned a bunch of sight words, and maybe she should have learned the sight words like "don't come in here" when the teacher's in here. But it became like really funny, and people like across the district started knowing about it.
Oh my gosh,
so funny, right? It's like, and I was so thankful that teacher was willing to just ride that wave and just to go with it, because oh gosh, she'll kill me.
I'm sure you have lots of stories like that.
Yeah, but it's funny, right?
Yeah, it is. And honestly, like we need to, I think, approach things with more lightheartedness if we can, and just embrace the quirks, right? Like these kids are brilliant in their own way and funny in their own way. And I feel like we can really capitalize on that and celebrate it, instead of constantly trying to fit kids into this idea of a normal box. Just kind of, really celebrate their uniqueness.
Right. I could not be more on board with that. Okay, so let me ask you, what do you feel about how do you think about perseveration using AAC? Do you redirect when it's appropriate, or do you?
So that's a great question. I think that it depends on the situation. I think first and foremost, I think children, especially children with autism, they have perseverations verbally. They have them on a device. And so I think this is a very typical thing that we see with autism. And the way I like to think about it is, if a child is constantly thinking the word and pulling the word, just because they're not able to have the output verbally does not mean they shouldn't be able to execute the motor plan for that word. So if their brain is like, whatever, cookie, and it's just cookie and they have to hit it, and cookie and they have to hit it, like to not be able to follow through with that process, right? I feel like that's really hard. Now, with that being said, I do think sometimes perseveration verbally or on a device, no matter what, I do think sometimes it can be quite distracting, and it can really impede a child's ability to learn, to have social interactions. And so I do think there's a time and a place to try to redirect. Obviously least to most like prompting hierarchy. I feel like follow. First I'm just like, oh yeah, we're not talking about that right now, and see if that can work. I try to redirect it to something that I know that they really like talking about. Because I feel like sometimes we try to like redirect to what's happening at circle time, and like kids don't care. Kids don't care about like what book we're reading at circle time. Like, and so I feel like that's not going to be a successful redirection. But oftentimes if you choose something that's really motivating and like, oh, like I know she'll want to talk about this instead. You can start shaping it to be a little bit more functional. But yeah, I mean, I think that I try to just let it slide if it's not a big deal. Because I feel like oftentimes parents are like, we're in the car and they just keep saying over and over again the same things. And I'm like, but that's not really impeding their ability to learn or connect or socialize, right? So I feel like, and also if we're thinking about on a device, especially in the initial stages of AAC, we have to assume that children are exploring and curious about the words and the pictures. And I think that the act of hitting words and hearing it and hitting words, and even if that's repetitive, I think that that's actually a learning process for kids.
I think it's super reinforcing, right? I mean, they're getting that feedback and they're able to let everybody know.
Yeah, and they're learning the motor plan too. Like that, they're like, think about
practicing over and over.
Exactly.
That's good. I like that. I like the way you're framing it.
Good. Well, I'm happy that I could to weigh in on that. It's a hard one though, because it's like some people are really extreme, like one way or the other. They're like, no, like especially ABA. They're like, no, like we disrupt, we like we turn the device, we take the device, we like all these things. I'm like, whoa, like we don't need to be that extreme.
Right.
I think that there's probably a middle ground, and I think that it's very context and child specific.
Yes. Yeah. And clearly there is, whether it's a compulsion or whether it's an overwhelming sense of like, I have to do this, it's clearly something, they're not making it up.
Well, exactly. It's not just like the function is hardly ever, if I would even argue never, to annoy someone. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that is, it's either like compulsive. It's like, I have this word in my head. I want to say it. Like I'm thinking about this thing nonstop. I want to say it. But like people get so annoyed by it, right? It's like, and that's us. So I'm just like, remember, it's not about us. Like it's about them. Yeah. So like, let's just like check that and remember, like, they're not doing it to annoy us. Like, they're doing it for whatever reason that may be unbeknownst to us at this point. But, yeah, it's a tough one though. That's actually a question I get asked a lot. Like when I do presentations, people are like, but like, what about the like perseverating or stimming on the device? And I'm like, honestly, I feel like oftentimes it has a purpose. Like I don't, it's random. Like I had this one student, she was perseverating and stimming so severely. Like it was just like, they're like, she won't ever stop. Like she's just like talking like 23 hours a day. And I was like, listen, I know it's probably hard, but eventually over time, I have been seeing this student for 3 years. She does not stim on the device anymore. She is completely intentional and she knows where every button is. So I feel like that intense period of stimming was like actually her learning where all the words are. And now she doesn't do it anymore. Right.
And so I think that's a good thing to remind parents of. Like, this is not forever. At least I don't know. I can't speak to
Well, and the other analogy that I like to use is like, what did we do the first time we ever touched a smartphone? Like, what was our first reaction? We were like, I was like a baby monkey, like boop, 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 like what's all these things do? I was hitting all the buttons. I was swiping. I didn't know what to do. I was exploring. I was figuring out how to work this new foreign thing that I had never experienced before. Before my like weird flip phone that I used to have with the really long antenna.
Yeah. Or playing Snake, right? I mean,
exactly. So it's just like, we had to remember these kids, while most of them have interacted with technology before, they've never seen a speech generating device. They've never seen like buttons with pictures of their favorite things that like say the word, over and over again.
Yeah.
So it's just like keeping that in mind when we're introducing AAC. It's like, it's a new novel thing. So of course, like kids are going to hit all the buttons and get really excited.
And, I mean, you talked about that before and I really appreciated that, being able to say, the first few, like we're babbling, like we're just starting out. Let's just see what this thing can do. And, like, somehow they magically find like the fart sounds or whatever. It happens to be pre-programmed on there. And then it's that or whatever. But like, let them just do their thing. You're right. That's what I did with my smartphone. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to steal that from you. I won't steal it. I'll credit you.
I would have been okay if you stole it.
Okay. I'm going to still credit you.
Yeah. Just tell them to listen to the podcast.
Okay. I'll redirect. Got it.
Love it. Love it. Well, Caitlyn, honestly, I feel like I could talk to you all day. It's like getting dark here because we've been talking for so long. We might actually have to split this into 2 episodes, which I'm even more excited about.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm excited. I feel like this is perfect. Honestly, I don't know how long we've been talking, but it's been a second. We started at 2:30, right?
4:30, yeah. Yeah, I'm 4:30.
Oh, your time. You're behind me.
Yes, yeah.
Or you're ahead of me.
Yes.
Is there anything else that like we haven't mentioned or touched on? I'm not even just saying this. Like, this is fantastic. I'm really excited about this.
I'm so glad because I really was not sure. I don't know. I'm surprised every time. I'm like, really?
Listen, I'm surprised too. I'm like, how many times do I have to say this over and over again? But like, I can't tell you like how many times people are like, oh my God, it was just pure genius. I'm like, I feel like I've said it like literally 5,000 times.
I know. Right. And I think it's getting better now that I'm like in my CF and I'm like, okay, I kind of know what I'm talking about. But especially when I was a student, I'm like, I felt like such an imposter, like, who am I?
We just had like an episode. Well, actually we haven't, it was Chris and I just talking and we were like, let's do an entire episode.
Oh, I heard it.
Syndrome. Yeah. I'm like so excited because I feel like it's something that we all go through. And
we do. And I think that that's just, the more that we can validate and kind of confess to these really difficult emotions that we all feel, like the more that we can connect and the more we can move past it. Right. I just
completely
just being able to say like, hey, I did not use my child's device. Like I didn't use it was so hard for me to say. But then I found out like lots of other people aren't using it either. I was like, see,
so many parents aren't using their devices.
Right. And so I really try to validate. And I think if people are willing to go there, and especially clinicians, it just makes other people a little braver. It's so hard to put yourself out there, especially when you are getting judgment from whoever, the internet, family, whatever. It's just the last thing I wanted was my SLP to think that I was less than, or that I didn't care. And so that's why I like that co-clinician kind of mentality is, we're in this together. Like you are just as important as me, the SLP. Like we're totally in this together and you have something super valuable to contribute. And yeah, it might take 1,000 times of telling your kid this or modeling this word, but let's not stop at 800, like let's keep going. It's going to take a really, really long time and it sucks and it's hard and, you get sick of it. But then when they do it back, it's like, oh my gosh, it's freaking working. Like it's so exciting for me as a parent, but also as an SLP. It's like, oh my gosh, it's working.
Exactly. And that like not getting stuck in the outcomes, because I feel like that's where we feel like we're, either not doing enough or we start having all those self-doubts. But knowing that eventually with persistence and consistency and, utilizing all the things we know from research about, the importance of modeling and routines-based intervention and all these things, it will eventually work. It
will. But I want to add to that. Like, I think as SLPs, we feel very responsible for our patients and we got into this because we want to help people, but also some families are just not in a place where they can fully commit to using a device. Like, the divorce rate of people with autism is so very high. And it's like, if you're trying to keep your marriage together and you don't want your house getting foreclosed on because now you've got all these bills, and there are some things that we can't do for families, and we have to be willing to accept that. And it's really hard, I think, because we never want to give up, right? Even if the child's kind of plateauing, I'm like, no, I don't know. I think they kind of improved on this. But the reality is for some families, like that grief is so overwhelming that it just takes over their ability to really be able to put into play something like this. And so be gentle to yourself too, because you can't solve everyone's problems, even though we really, 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 really want to. I think we take that on ourselves a lot. And so there are people who are just stuck in that grief and are cannot, fully commit to this, what you're trying to do at this time. That doesn't mean it's always, but, it's a very real thing, that grief, and it's really intense. And I think, also, I don't think it's a one-time thing. I think parents go through it over and over again. It's just this, something will remind someone, or I'll see another parent with like a child with disabilities at Target. And now I'm like crying in Target with a stranger, like so not weird, right? I'm like, you know,
I know.
and it's just this really weird space to be in. So you're doing a good job. I try to tell the SLPs that, but also I was at an ARD once and it was overwhelming, but I did my thing. And right after, someone came up to me and like patted my shoulder and said, I just want you to know you're doing a really good job as a mom. And like, I went into the car and was like full on hysterical. Like I couldn't even drive because my kid's not telling me that.
Mm-hmm.
My kid is not telling me that.
Yeah. Most kids are not telling their parents that.
Kids don't even do that. Right. Exactly. My son is 15. Yeah. He's like, yeah, okay. But we don't appreciate it until we're older, right? We just don't know. So being able to hear that was really great. And so I tried to do that to other parents and to my child's SLP. Like, hey, I know she's frustrating. I know. And I appreciate your hard work and your willingness to work with her because she's broken her SLP's glasses. She's, you know, like tried to hide and say, oh, I'm not going to speech. Like, it's just it's so embarrassing in some ways.
Well, and I think that that's an important message to parents is that, you know, recognizing that sometimes, you know, these children are not easy to work with. Right. And I think that as clinicians, we understand that. But again, it's nice to hear. It's always nice to hear that somebody thinks that you're doing a good job.
Right. And I think it goes both ways.
It goes both ways.
I want my children's teachers and SLPs to know like how much I appreciate it because I know how difficult she is. I do. She's wonderful and precious and sweet, but she's also a tween, you know, we're in middle school now. And it's like, it's just really hard. Now we've got puberty in the mix and she's just even more moody and things are happening to her. She doesn't understand. I made a social story on, I'll just say on periods. And I sent it to my autism professor and he was like, this is kind of terrible.
Wait, why is it terrible?
I didn't follow the formula that's the research shows. Like you have to have an informative page for, you know, and then the reinforcing pages or whatever. I don't remember. I hope he doesn't listen to this, but but it was like, oh, okay, sorry. So I redid it. I didn't send it to him. I sent it to someone else who I knew would be like, great. Like,
exactly. Yeah. Send it to somebody who could validate me and all the things that I'm doing.
Right. So, I mean, it's a tough time for everybody involved and especially her. It's hard enough being a kid going through puberty. Now I got to like be a kid who has communication issues going through puberty. It's like double whammy, right?
Yeah,
so I was
worse.
just trying to look for ways to help her and I decided to do this and it was like, it was really embarrassing.
Listen, Caitlyn, I appreciate all of your rawness and realness. And I know for a fact that parents and clinicians will appreciate it too. Again, I think it's really admirable and brave that you are willing to speak so openly because I know that there are parents out there who are going to listen to this and they're going to be like, oh my God, thank God I'm not the only one.
I know. But we always feel like that. I mean, in school, our teachers are always like, ask the question or make the comment because you're not the only one thinking it, you know? And I try to act like that's true. I don't always know. And I have said things that people are like, no, Caitlyn, no one. I was like, just kidding. I wasn't thinking that either. I just said it. I don't know. But it's just hard to be vulnerable, period. And so it's nice that people can relate and connect. And that's really all I want is just people to know that this is really hard and it's complicated and you're going to feel guilty, but you don't need to because it's a complex thing and we're in this together.
So there's one question that we ask the people that we have on this podcast, and it is, if you had a billboard that every speech language pathologist could see, what would your billboard say?
100%. Bring the parent in and model.
I love it.
Just show them how it's done. I mean, you don't even need to like explicitly teach it. Just being able to see like, oh, I see what she's doing here. I wish I had understood what that was. And I didn't for lots of reasons, but definitely modeling and letting the parent be part of that would be super helpful.
I love that. And I think it's a really important reminder to just not stop telling, but start showing is the important piece, right?
Because that's what we're asking them to do. We got to show our kids how to use it.
And that's the thing is like, I can explain these principles all day long till I'm, blue in the face, but I can show something in seconds. I can show it and I don't even need to explain it because you're like, oh, that's like, it would have taken me 400 words to explain that. But like, look, in an instant, I can show you exactly what I'm talking about.
Right. We're really good at using 400 words.
Oh yeah. We love words.
Yeah. So many words. It's just like word vomit. And yeah, but you're right. And it is important to put words to that too, right? I mean, to give the basics, but I think showing is super helpful because that's what we're asking the parent to do.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Well, Caitlyn, where can people reach you if they want to connect with you? I have a feeling that a lot of parents are going to listen to this and they might want to connect.
Yeah, sure. It's just my name's Caitlyn Calder at gmail.com, CaitlynCalder@gmail.com. I have one that says Caitlyn Calder SLP, but I haven't used it yet.
You'll use it soon when you get that. Yeah. Well, Caitlyn, thank you again so much for coming on and sharing your experience with us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the podcast and all that you're doing. You're really doing such a service to our community.
Thank you so much. So for Talking with Tech, I'm Rachel Madel, joined with Caitlyn Calder. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Please listen carefully.
Hi, I'm Matt Hott, one of the hosts of Speech Science, a weekly podcast bringing you all the information that you can handle related to speech sciences and disabilities. Michelle Wintering, Michael McLeod, and I interview leaders and difference makers in the field. Every Tuesday, we drop a new episode. You can find us on iTunes, Android, and on our website, www.speechscience.org/Speech Science Podcast. Join us as we try to find the answers to the question,
what is communication?
You're listening to the Exceptional Podcast Network.